Hello everyone. After we finish the first part, the sample paper analysis, let's come to the second part, 2024 competition preparation plan. Because almost all of you have signed up for the TASMO, which means you must have some thoughts on take more competitions in the primary period. So I will share something about that. First of all, this is the whole plan for the primary ones. How can we prepare for different competitions and to arrange our kids in their primary period? First of all, now we are only the K2 kids, which means for here, we will pay more attention on the P1 to P2 ones. For here, the first part I'm gonna share is the transition between the preschool and the primary school. And then the next thing I want emphasize is the calculation, because in the whole lower primary period, the most important thing for kids to learn is the calculation. And then I will share something about the Math Olympiad competition. We will have two major ones I recommend these kids to take part in. One is the Math Kangaroo, another is the TASMO. And for P1, I wanted to pay more attention on the Math Kangaroo, because we can find out for TASMO, the major part is the application, practical application, which is the word problems. But for the Kangaroo, it will emphasize the logic, the observation, and spatial awareness, which is easier for kids to learn them, which means they will get the better grades by some practice, and then we will have a positive cycle for them to learn the math in the primary school. And then let's come to the first part. That is the transition of competences from preschools to primary schools. For the kindergarten part, we have 7 key abilities. We have attention, which means how long can they focus on the different time lengths of the classes. And then the observation is how can they identify the things around them and what's the characteristics of all the things. And then the number sense is the calculation. We also have the logical reasoning and spatial awareness. Of course, the memory, the words and different rules, and in the primary school, they will have more subjects for them to learn. How can they memorize all the different things? And then the next one is articulation, which means can they express themselves clearly and in order. Okay, and that's for the kindergarten part. So the difference will be that in the primary school, we will have huge calculation. And then we will pay more attention on the comprehension of word problems. And then, of course, we will have some geometrical sense. So for all the math knowledge of the primary school, we divide them into 5 parts. We will have the calculation, geometry, and spatial awareness together. We'll also have the word problems, counting number theory together, and then we have combinatorics. From top to the bottom, the difficulty level just become higher and higher, which means, remember that just now I said the calculation is the most important part in lower primary period, but it is the easiest one part of the whole Olympiad knowledge. And then we also have the geometry. This one is also very important in MOE courses. And then for the word problem, that will be a comprehensive training of kids. We have a lot of types. We have the age problem, interval problems, unitary models, and comparison model, worst case scenario, chicken and rabbits, a lot of different types. And then we have to take time to learn them one by one. We also have some abstract things, for example, the number theory and combinatorics, which means for those two, you have to really pay attention to the logic and how can we learn it from the very beginning, which means the ability we require for kids is totally different. We will have a transition between the preschool and the primary school. And then we can find out. Just now, even though I said most of you must have thoughts on the competition, but maybe some of you still think about that. Do I really have to take part in a lot of competitions? Okay, so we will have a few reasons for that. The first thing is that we will have a very important test in primary 3, which is the GEP. But we know that from the primary 1 and primary 2, almost all the primary school, they will not have the very officially formal test for kids to take part in. which means we cannot just send our kids to GEP without any training, without any practice on the skills, like finish a test paper within a specific time period, and how can we arrange the time for different difficulty levels questions, which means we have some practice in advance. And then the SMKC is the easier one for kids to prepare and to form the habit of taking tests and practice the skills on taking tests. And then the third one is the kids are still young. They are 6 or 7 years old. They still have a lot of potential on that. Maybe you thought, I didn't see many talents for my kids on math, but come on, they are very young. After the guidance and the practice, as long as they can see the progress, they just have the faith, have the confidence to continue the road to learning the math. And then, if we decide to take the SMKC, let's see the past year paper analysis. Remember that you pay attention to the logic, the shapes, the patterns, and then we can find out all 6 past year papers. If you're not so familiar with the Chinese, I can just tell you the conclusion. The shapes, the graphs here, is always the major part of all the tests. And then we have the practical application, and then in recent years, it become more and more is the logic. But for here, it still connect to the ability, but not so math, which means after we have some practice, we can just learn it and take the test. We can just see the difficulty level of the SMKC. Even though I said it will easier for kids to prepare, it's still a competition. It will still a little bit hard for their age. For example, the first one, there are 10 camels in a zoo. The camels are either Bactrian or dromedary. In total, there are 14 humps. Find the number of Bactrian camels in the zoo. If you are very familiar with the Math Olympiad knowledge, you can know that actually for this one, it's the chicken and rabbit problem. It's just the chicken become the dromedary, and then the rabbit is the Bactrian. And the legs is the humps here. For the young kids, we have the method is the listing, which means see we have 14 humps altogether. We can list how many 1 hump ones we have, how many 2 hump ones we have. For example, we know that we have 10 camels in total. 1 and 9, 2 and A, and 2C. Whether we have the correct number, 14. This is one method. But as long as we learn the model, the chicken rabbit problem before, we can know that. We can use the assumption method to do that. We can assume all the camels are the dromedaries. And then we can find out how many camels should we exchange from the 1 hump ones to 2 hump ones so that we can have more humps, and then we can just know the answer directly. Which means if they know how to do that, this one is not hard. It's the basic type of this question. But if you don't know, it will take a lot of time and energy to do that. And then for next one, it says, 3 squirrels, Annie, Asia, Ellie collected 7 nuts in total. Each collected a different number of nuts, but each collected at least 1. Annie collected the least, Asia the most. How many nuts did Ellie collect? So for here, it's the method of enumeration. First of all, we have to divide the 7 nuts in total into 3 groups. And then we just list all the equations, the possibilities, the combinations. For example, we will have 1, 1, 5, or 1, 2, 4, or 1, 3, 3, or 2, 2, 3. Okay, something like this. And then we have to learn that whether we can know the words means. For example, it says collect different numbers of nuts, which means we will cancel some combinations. And then after that, we have to also know that what is the order. For example, it says Annie collect the least. Can we find out the nuts did the Ellie collect? Which means for such questions, it will be a very comprehensive ones for them to find out the answer, which means we will need more practice. Okay, if you find out, okay, teacher, I want to eat. I want to take part in the SMKC and I want to prepare for it. How can we do that? So let's tell you how can we plan the preparation for the whole part. from the October to November, which means for here, for now, we can have some module practice. We can use the TASMO you're going to take part in for next week as a mock text to check the module, like which part you know a lot, or which part you don't know. And then after that, for the January, you will get the notification that you can sign up for a test. After you sign up, you can have another mock test to check how you works in the past 2 months, or to check again which part you have to enhance that. And then from January to February, we'll offer some short-term courses for kids to prepare for the test by the type of the modules. And we also have the past year paper analysis to see how can we arrange time, like how can we form the skills on doing tests. And then at the end of the February, we will have the medal course selection, which means if you think, I'm doing very well, I want to get the silver, at least the silver, and of course I want the gold medal or even a perfect score. And you can just take part. And after you pass the selection, you will have the medal courses. And then after that, you will have a lot of mock tests during the whole March and April. And then it's time for us to take the test and looking forward for the result to see how it works for the past few months. And then let's check what we have for here with a very fast speed. You can see that we just divide them in different modules with the calculation, counting, combinatorics, something like that. And for every small courses, we will have some tests. See, for lesson 12, we will have a midterm review. And then, see, we also have the word problems, the geometry, and for the lesson 24, we will have another practice. That's how we form the habit of taking tests and to learn something after we, and to check whether we learn well for the past lessons. Okay, so after all the sharing, I want to discuss something with you. The first thing is that because the kids are very young, so the purpose or the goal for us is to help them obtain a sense of accomplishment, which means maybe we can have some tests periodically and then to get good results and just have a positive cycle, just as I mentioned before. And then in the process of that, the kids can stimulate learning interests and enhance thinking abilities, because we all know that the math is a subject about logic, and which means it's a basic subject for other subjects. As long as we can do well in the math, it will be easier for kids to learn other subjects. And at last, I have one sentence to share with you. Math is for us to develop kids' habits of thinking about problems and how can we solve it in the future. Okay, so that's all for today's sharing. Thanks for your time. See you at the TASMO. Hope you to get the good grades. Bye-bye.